Chapter 9 Horsehead. Of all the things that Link had seen both during the fight against Ganondorf and after, nothing quite compared to seeing an armored horse knight thing pulling itself out of a stone relief. Shaking off the last of the stone fragments and dust as soon as it was free, the beast snorted and let out a low neigh before tightening the grip on the Morning Star weapon. And then it attacked. Whoosh! He felt the rush of wind as the beast swung its weapon upwards, the spikes on the bald end missing his face by only an inch, and forcing the Lord Sheriff to back off as the snorting horse monster stomped towards him. With a loud bray, it swung its weapon again, this time taking a chunk out of a nearby ruined wall when it missed him, scattering debris in all directions. It did, however, give Link a chance to make an attack of his own. He had been forced to duck down to avoid the last swing, leaving only the beast's lower back open for a strike, so the Lord Sheriff swung his silver sword. It was a clean hit, perfectly aimed, but sparks flew as the blade tore across the beast's red armor, leaving not even a scratch when it was done. By this time, the horse monster was ready to continue, and when it swung its Morning Star, Link cried out as two of the spikes raked across his chest. There was a small spray of blood as the Lord Sheriff was knocked off his feet, and the stinging pain gave him only an instant to react, turning his body to the side so that some dust was kicked up when the Morning Star slammed into the ground. With a loud neigh, the beast raised its weapon up again, forcing Link to turn his body the other way to avoid the next hit, but this time he swung his shield, connecting with the beast's nose. Letting out an irritated snort, the horse monster stood upright while twitching its nose, giving Link the chance to pull himself to his feet. At least now he was certain of the beast's weak point. So, once standing again, he sliced toward the beast's throat, only to miss when it leaned back. With the momentum of his swing moving his arm outward, the Lord Sheriff barely had time to get his shield in the way when the horse monster made a powerful upward swing with its Morning Star that was right on target. Bam! The spike ball weapon might have hit the shield instead of his chest, but there was enough force in the blow to knock the small shield from his arm, sending it flying off to the side while Link was sent flying backwards as well. He landed on the dusty ground so hard that the Lord Sheriff actually rolled backwards to a kneeling position before his vision came back into focus. Although his shield had saved his life, Link's chest still felt like it had been struck with a club, making it hard to breathe or move. The horse monster was still coming, so he struggled to get up, only to taste blood and hear a ringing in his ears. When the Morning Star weapon was brought across his face, it wasn't a direct hit, only 3 of the spikes tearing into his cheek instead of the whole thing, which probably would have killed him, but it was enough to make the Lord Sheriff spin around before falling on his face. Losing his grip on his sword as he fell, Link's vision was tilted to the side, making him partially unaware of how he managed to roll over and avoid the next blow with the Morning Star, which was hard enough to put cracks into the ground. In desperation, he grabbed a handful of sand and tossed it right into the beast's eyes, causing the horse monster to bray loudly as he stumbled backwards, giving the Lord Sheriff enough time to scramble away. Even with his vision and hearing partially impaired, Link somehow managed to get himself behind one of the ruined walls before the beast could recover, and as his vision refocused and the ringing stopped, it became obvious that the horse monster was not pleased with this development. Stomp, stomp, stomp. The beast snorted angrily as it wandered the ruins of Parappa Palace, searching for him, but thankfully starting off in the wrong direction. Still breathing heavily and feeling a sharp stinging pain in both his chest and face, Link knew that he needed to get his sword back if he wanted to have a chance against the horse monster, and his shield would have been nice to have as well, but he hadn't seen where it had landed. The only weapon that the Lord Sheriff still had was his old boomerang. Not that it was going to be of much help against the beast that was now hunting him, and now the horse monster was getting angry. Braying loudly as it swung its Morning Star weapon, the beast knocked a large piece of the wall next to it, hit something else, and then smashed the same wall so hard that the whole thing rocked back and forth. Gasping as he realized what this meant, the Lord Sheriff threw caution to the wind, running out of hiding, and then running towards the wall as fast as he could. This run probably would have been a lot faster if he hadn't been injured, but it was all worth it when he rammed into the loosened wall, and it fell towards the beast on the other side. With a kind of rocky scratching sound, the section of ruined wall tumbled downward, hitting the ground with a powerful slam and kicking up so much dirt and dust that it became impossible to see anything through the cloud. Silence followed, though, allowing a smile to start forming on Link's face as the desert wind blew away the dust, and then caused that smile to fade when he saw that the horse monster was still standing, about a foot from where the top of the wall had crashed. He missed. The best opportunity he had gotten to kill the beast, and he had missed. Now the Lord Sheriff stood there, mostly unarmed, while the very much still armed horse monster just stood there, glaring angrily at him for several seconds. It then stomped forward, neighing furiously as it stepped over the fallen wall, and swinging the Morning Star weapon wildly. To avoid these attacks, Link had to continuously jump backwards, finally managing to duck and move around the beast in order to throw his boomerang. The curved weapon made a kind of whistling sound as it spun through the air, missing the beast's head completely as it turned around to continue the pursuit. As the boomerang flew out of sight, the horse monster swung its weapon again, this time catching Link in the side with its full force, stabbing and bashing him in the ribs at the same time, and knocking him down right next to where his sword had fallen. Struggling to grab the hilt of the blade while the beast stood over him for the kill, the boomerang suddenly came backwards, striking the horse monster in the back of the head, surprising the beast enough to make it lower its weapon while stumbling forward. The Lord Sheriff used what remained of his strength to stand up while stabbing the silver sword right through the side of the beast's neck. Blood sprayed from its mouth as the blade was driven in, and the horse monster tried to back off, but it dropped the Morning Star weapon in the process. Now the beast was so focused on trying to remove the sword from its neck that it didn't notice when Link picked up the spike ball weapon and swung it upward. Crack! Making contact with the beast's nose, even more blood was sprayed as the horse monster was knocked onto its back, and now it was the Lord Sheriff's turn to stand over it. Raising the weapon, he brought it down on the horse monster's head again and again, bashing and smashing it until there was nothing left, and then he dropped the Morning Star in order to pick up his silver sword. Maybe it was the extent of his own injuries, but once the beast had been defeated, Link swore that he was able to feel something moving within the ground, as if the whole kingdom was somehow adjusting to his victory. "You did it," Sing's voice said, half in disbelief as she walked into view. "And you're still alive as well." She had apparently found their lost horse, since the magician was now leading it across the ruins by the reins, but now that the rush of fighting the horse monster was starting to fade, it felt like Link's wounds were getting worse. In fact, it was becoming difficult to even stay standing up, so he let the sword again fall from his hands as he sunk to his knees. There was a terrible throbbing inside his head on top of it all, while his vision seemed to be getting slowly brighter, until it was hard to look at anything at all. "I have to tell you that less than half who have tried this quest have made it this far," the dark-haired woman continued, getting closer to him. "Somehow, I knew you would, though." Another rumbling sound came from behind, and although having to squint heavily from the brightness, the Lord Sheriff was able to see that the stone relief which had contained the horse monster was repairing itself. A few seconds later, the carved figure of the beast was restored, and all Link wanted to do was just get out of there, but first he needed to collect his things. Everything was so hard to see, though. "I can't find my shield," he said weakly, his vision tilting each time he tried to move his head. "Do you see my weapons anywhere?" Trying to feel around for his sword, Link found himself starting to fall, but was surprised when Sing knelt down to catch him. Yes, she was technically his enemy, and the one responsible for him having to go through this whole mess in the first place, but right now he was more than happy to rest against her. She was so soft, and she smelled so good, and at this point anything was better than getting another scrape from hitting the dusty ground. For a moment the Lord Sheriff thought that he was starting to recover as the brightness began to dim, but then he realized he was starting to lose feeling in parts of his body. The magician said something, but her voice was muffled, and he couldn't understand the words, or anything else for that matter, as he slowly lost consciousness.